leaders. We are placing the link to the chat in the chat for the sign-in sheet. The link also will have our slides and resources as well. Make sure that you're not signing over someone on the sign-in sheet, because we want to make sure we have a record of everyone that is joining us this afternoon. We hope that you've had a great day of school today as we move into the hump day tomorrow. The PDF of the slides are at the top of the sign-in page. The recording of this webinar will be added a bit later. Today, we're going to have opportunities to learn as a whole group. We'll be sharing chunks of content with you, and then we'll have some opportunities to do some reflecting. We'll ask you to consider some questions related to the content that we previously shared. And then at the end, if you have opportunity to reflect with your team, that'll just be a bonus. Take a moment to look over our agenda for the day so that you can see what topics we'll be addressing. And no matter which levers you are focusing on, we can make connections to all of the essential actions as we plan for leading through looking at the lens of logistics and systems today. In January, we talked about leading strong by planning for EOC or STAR review planning structures. Last month, Terry and Allison reviewed those structures for actively visioning for next year and what you want to achieve. Today, we'll dig into those logistics and systems that are critical to engage in now for next year, while you have access to your team of current and emerging leaders. Let's jump right into our first chunk of learning. Why would we want to spend time thinking about logistics and systems? Let's recall from our December virtual learning session that hope is something that we lead. The way that we lead hope is to make sure there's a clear vision of constructed goals that aligns with our vision, mission, values, and commitments. Making sure that we have this alignment to our vision, mission, values, and commitments. And we are also responsive to the current reality of our campus. A clear vision helps everyone see the work is connected and focused on achieving a common goal. Then providing a pathway forward with aligned strategic logistics and systems will get us to that point, which will make it apparent to our leaders and teachers that we can do this. Seeing the pathway is how we build agency and move people to action. The systems and logistics work must be informed by a full perspective of your current state of your school to ensure that you have all the information that you need. You're going to need to listen to what's going on. Listening is a powerful tool for engaging at a deeper level. It helps us move from doing and directing to empowering. And this is part of leading hope. Your perspective as a leader has the widest scope, and your action have the biggest impact and influence. So make sure you are taking the time to be a learner. Take feedback and input from your mentors, your colleagues, and your coaches. Seek current articles and updates to make sure you can see the landscape ahead clearly. We talked last month about taking some time and calendaring time for you to do that vision work. There's nothing wrong with putting that time on your calendar, because without that vision, it will be difficult for you to communicate where you're headed as a campus to all of your stakeholders. So giving yourself time to vision and dream and gain perspective. Now is the time. Also, it's important for you to gather input from your students. If we are focused on our students and leading a student-centered school, or if you're like our organization at E3, we always have a students first perspective, then we'll care what those students think and we'll want to gain their feedback. Consider surveys, yes, but also focus group interviews, student advisory task forces are a great way to make sure their powerful voices are heard and put into use. One-to-one meetings with teachers this spring may seem a little bit out of reach, but they can be transformative, especially if you're identifying emerging leaders and trying to make sure that you know everything you need to know to create the right systems for success. One great way to do this is through a questionnaire or survey, like the one in our sample educator exclusive form. We have shared this with you, and you are able to edit to make it your own. But sending this out now will help you gather information that you'll need for strategic staffing, master schedule design, which Letty will talk more about, and leadership teaming. Providing opportunities for staff to provide input and share their ideas and intentions builds trust and communicates confidence. This example is included in today's resources. Okay, let's take a mindful moment and spend about 30 seconds considering these questions. Do you have time on your calendar now and through the rest of spring to work on vision for next year? And what are some strategies that you might want to use from our leaders' listens right now? I'll give you some time to think. I'm going to ask my E3 colleagues if you have any thing you want to chip into this conversation. I would invite you to join in.
Thanks, Janelle. I'd love to. I had two really big things I needed to say. I was just listening to you, and I can't help but want to just put an underline and an exclamation point into what you were saying about calendaring and making that space for yourself, because I think one of the things, you know, we work with leaders across the state that arrive with the best intentions every day, and then something happens, and it's not like you get thrown entirely off course, but the fact is there are some days where things can happen all day long that keep you from that intention. And you know, if you have it on your calendar, you have a better chance of making sure. I kind of reminded, I think we had a story once that we shared, like this idea that if your ideas and your decisions are like you know, things that make positive change, that you could think of it like ripples in the water. And the fact is, you see things as a campus leader that other people don't see. Mm-hmm. So your impact on that water and the level of impact that you have with the things you say and the things you're able to do throughout each day, that just goes a really big way for making change in your school. And the other thing is, I love the sample questionnaire that we put out, because I think a lot of people do try to gather and listen to, especially classroom teachers this time of year, and to hear what are they interested in doing next year, what their plans are. But also, I love, Janelle, I think that was your seedling about adding things that will pull out strengths that maybe aren't being accessed at that time. So for instance, if you are already seeing a need for increased social emotional support next year, or relational practices, and you have a teacher that maybe has been reading books or going to trainings that you don't know about, and they have that strength to bring, then you'll need questions in your one-on-one interviews or your surveys that will bring that out. So those are my two thoughts when you were sharing, but thanks for letting me chime in.
Thank you, Terry. I think you're exactly right. Oftentimes, we think we have a great idea of all of the areas of interest and expertise that our teachers have, but sometimes those may be hidden from us, and they may be just looking for an opportunity to say, "Hey, I've been reading about this. I'd really like to give this a try." So I think you're exactly right. Just providing a space where they can share that information. All right, thank you again, Terry. Okay, Letty, next, she's going to take us through content focused on messaging.
Thanks, Janelle. So now, how will we message our vision and mission in the upcoming year? When messaging for the 2023-24 school year, you will want to make sure your vision from your vision task force is clearly communicated. Here are a few ways to ensure you communicate that aligned messaging. Let staff know the campus priorities moving into 23-24 school year with an end of year message. Design a master schedule aligned to your priorities. Also, reinforcing and retaining staff emerging as leaders of your culture and shared practices. When messaging for the 2023-24 school year, you will want to make sure your vision from your vision task force is clearly communicated by the leadership team. So having a formal end of year message for teachers to let them know what your priorities for next year will be is essential in laying the groundwork for the work you will do together next year. So make sure you add this date to your calendar so that you can plan this out with your instructional admin team and or your vision task force to ensure it is messaged just right. In the resources we share with you today, that you will see an example of an end of year staff meeting slide set and exit tickets. In the example, priorities for next year, including non-negotiables and updated or existing culture documents like shared values or commitments, this is your time to make sure that you clearly communicate where the campus is heading together. The exit ticket is an example of how to gather acknowledgement of the commitments for next year. This will be a step forward in clarity, communicating next year's expectations. When they show up in August, you'll be activating their prior knowledge. You will want to make sure that your master schedule is aligned with that vision you created with your vision task force. Utilize your student-centered decision-making that helps you meet goals and build your positive, supportive school culture. Here's a list of some examples. If you want to increase teacher capacity or for building relationships with students, schedule some time for that. If you are focused on reading and find research that supports it, you may strategically schedule reading classes or blocks for the morning. If you know that effective instruction will be the main focus for next year, you will need to structure time to provide job-embedded professional development, PLC practices, and coaching. So make time for it. Optimize talent and passion through strategic staffing. One idea is to design a master schedule where the leaders in growth mindset, student-centered practices, and positive culture captains are distributed across the grade levels. Plan for strategic collaboration time so they can strengthen the message and the practices. Keep it in your practice to identify emerging leaders of your school's message or vision. Remember, your master schedule is not just a to-do, it's a leadership tool to make moves toward your vision and serve your mission. Consider building your shared leadership teams for next year. Do those people you have in mind know what you are visioning? Having scheduled one-on-one meetings for the end of year is very powerful to ensure you are having an opportunity to reinforce behaviors and practices that you want for your school that align with the vision. For example, if you want to lead a school where all the educators speak about students in a restorative way with an asset-based mindset, then identify teachers who already do that, often and loudly. You'll want to establish trust and partnership with those teachers by getting some one-on-one face time with them to make sure they know the vision and blueprint for next year. Retain teachers and staff who align with the 2022-23 blueprint already. If you want to build and develop a student-centered culture where people lean in and do whatever it takes, there are likely people already working with you now who are aligned with this vision. Engaging in these one-on-one, face-to-face meetings to strengthen the relationship and make the vision for next year clear goes a long way to gain their commitment and enthusiasm for next year. Resilience is the characteristic you want to build in your professional learning community as a whole. You want a resilient team of professional educators who can flex when needed, surmount challenges, and work through adversity together. Identifying the individuals at this point in the school year who fit these characteristics can contribute positively, will fortify your efforts to build a team to cultivate and lead the school you dream of for your students. The last step in logistics and systems planning is to evaluate your current systems. When evaluating your current systems, find a system that worked really well for your campus. This may be your dismissal system. So what is it about this system that made it work like it should? Was it detailed and documented, communicated clearly, supported with ongoing support when teachers or students did not follow the system as it was written in the document? And with that, it was monitored and feedback was given. Use these things that worked and apply them to the new systems you will either create or strengthen around your big priorities from your visioning task force. Look for systems that align to these big priorities and determine what needs to be adjusted in the system. Use the systems checklist that we will share with you today and reevaluate those systems with your vision task force or leadership team. Understand what additional parts of the system need to be adjusted or added for that system to function to its greatest potential to make the most impact on student success. Lastly, look for things that need to be de-implemented and be clear about de-implementing them with staff at the beginning of the school year, especially if it is going to compete with the direction you have chosen as a leadership. For example, if you are going to add a new playbook strategy of think, pair, share, you might want to be very strategic about what you might have to clear up as far as language, because some teachers will automatically think, oh, I do that turn and talk stuff all the time. So you will want to be clear in your communication, what that play is and is not. So with your leadership team, you will want to make sure that you build strong systems around your top priorities. You will find that some of your priorities will involve multiple systems working in conjunction with one another. For instance, when building your PLC system and you get to the who will attend, you will need to create a separate system for how you will make sure an administrator is in attendance every meeting, which could impact the master's schedule and their administrative duty schedule. So when meeting with your leadership team, make sure there is a document laying out exactly what you expect and plan for a time at the beginning of next school year to clearly communicate those expectations on the document and then be ready to support those documents with multiple learnings, support, coaching, monitoring, and feedback throughout the year. Calendaring for these things in the summer or now is the small things that will make all the difference in implementation next year. All right, let's take a mindful moment. I'm going to give you 30 seconds to just go over these two questions. What is your plan for developing the message for 2023-24? What are the need to knows for anyone who joins or rejoins your professional learning community next year? Who will help you evaluate your current systems Is there anything you're already thinking should be de-implemented? So let's take 30 seconds. All right, remember, in the absence of systems, we will create chaos. Everyone functions in what they think should be happening. Just because we are busy, it does not mean we are busy on the right things.
Hey, Letty, can we pause there? I think Allison had her hand up. Do you mind? I'm sorry to interrupt.
Oh, no, go ahead.
No, Letty, I was just gonna, while we were kind of, doing the mindful moment, I was thinking about what you were saying about messaging for the next year. And we often do this messaging with our current staff, but this also could be a really great time as a leader to really get that message together for recruitment. So really thinking about those priorities for next year and using them in your recruitment process so that you can outline those commitments and do kind of the same thing with your new hires and say, hey, these are our priorities for next school year. I'm going to need you to be okay with these before you want to come work for us, because this is what we're going to be about next year. I think that goes a long way with that kind of getting them on board in that onboarding process. Terry, you had something to add?
Yeah, same thing. I think some lightning just went off in my brain when Letty was talking and what Janelle was sharing earlier about the surveys, because Letty, you talked about de-implementation. And it's also kind of connected is like, if we're going to recruit and retain staff based on, working environment, sometimes we may think as leaders that we have de-implemented something and it's still hanging around like as, legacy practice. Meanwhile, that's impacting some people's work environment because they still think that we're doing things that maybe we've moved on or it's not clear. So I just think that more like intentional, deliberate de-implementation and being so clear about that is so important for teachers. Like you talked about the think, pair, share, and just being very clear about that communication, but also, hey, let's be clear that we're not doing that anymore. We are doing this. So I think all of it kind of feeds into that clarity going forward. It's so important, especially if you want to communicate how things are going to be next year, whether you're joining the journey or you've been on it and you're looking forward to next year. Thanks.
Thank you, Allison and Terry. Yes, and having clear expectations going into the new year, it just makes it for an environment that is just very open to what to expect throughout the year. Okay, so like I was saying, just because we are busy does not mean that we are busy on the right thing. So we'd like to leave you with a message from your E3 team. After you visioned with your team, it's time to build strong systems around your top 3 priorities. So start this work now and get the right people involved so that they have ownership of these systems for next year. Resources from today's session will include today's slides, the example educator exclusive form, the example end of year last whole staff meeting, and exit tickets and the systems checklist. So these resources are linked in the sign-in sheet. All right, we will send out a follow-up email next week with the resources, and we will link this recording as well. Thank you all for all that you do. We will remain on for the next 15 minutes if you have any questions about today's learning or how we can support you. Thank you and have a good rest of the week.